Thank you. I'm flattered and honored to be here. First,
That can't be.
now for my next trick. I'd like to introduce Pete Graham, who played on our '88 national championship team, was a quarterback for us and special teams. Always great. I wanted to introduce him because now you know I'm really a better coach than you thought, having one with Pete. But be that as it may, great to have you.
Well, before the lunch began, I walked up to Coach and I said, "Hey, I hear you're a movie star. Has anybody seen Blind Side yet?" Okay, well, if you've seen Blind Side, then don't give it away. So Coach Holtz was invited to make a cameo appearance in The Blind Side, which is about Michael Orr, who was drafted in the first round this year by the Ravens, and he's playing on their offensive line. Coach Holtz was invited because he actually recruited Michael at South Carolina, and so I asked him what his experience was like and how it was shooting the movie, only to find out that he actually didn't make it into the movie. So, Coach, why don't you share that story?
I'm in the trailer longer than I'm in the movie, but Fred Smith called me from FedEx. He owns a movie company. His daughter, Molly Smith, was executive producer. We're making this movie on Michael Orr, who you tried to recruit. We want you to do a cameo appearance. I said, Fred, I'm no cameo appearance. I'm supporting actor at worst. You know, I felt that. But I'm in it very, very little. But Sandra Bullock does a beautiful job. I think she has a chance to win an Oscar. It's a true story. And it was fun to do. It was fun to be in the movie. It's amazing how I've risen in the eyes of my grandchildren, that I'm a movie star now.
What's harder, acting, coaching, or being on TV?
Well, TV, you just talk till you think of something to say. Let me tell you, and I know this all, I don't know where it's all going, so I'm not smart enough to lie. I just tell you, they came to me when I left coaching. I thought I was retired. They found out I was retarded, and they said, we want you to come up and do ESPN2 on Saturday. And I thought, that's good tour duty, just one day, won't be gone. Well, the first week I'm there, they fired Trev Alberts for insubordination, and they came to me, and they said, we have a 3-man set. We want you to sit in the middle chair till we figure out what we're going to do next week. So I go sit there. I don't know Reese. I don't know Mark. I'm not going to say anything, but pretty soon I thought, I can't let Mark get away with that. That's stupid. And that was 5 years ago. And I tell you, Mark May is a beautiful person. He's smart, he's intelligent, he's professional. Reese Davis, the best. There's no teleprompter, no script, no rehearsal in anything you do. And they asked me once, I couldn't help but think the introduction, they asked my Dr. Lou, how would you introduce Mark May? And I said, the way I'd introduce him is, only in America could it happen. A guy born into poverty, but with hard work, dedication, persevered, rose to become one of the true giants in this country. A guy that's loved and respected by his peers. An individual that's a legendary figure, a guy in the Hall of Fame. I could go on and on about my life, but I'm here to introduce Mark May.
I love it. Only in television can you call somebody stupid, and we consider that chemistry. I'm glad you're up here because I read a quote. If you haven't heard, Charlie Weiss has been fired. But I read an interesting quote from Gene Corrigan, who's former ACC commissioner. He was the athletic director at Notre Dame, and he hired you. And he said that the biggest challenge for Notre Dame is finding someone who actually wants the job. Now, Urban Meyer at Florida has already come out and said he's not interested. Bob Stoops at Oklahoma said he's not interested. Kirk Ferentz has said that it's not appropriate to ask if Notre Dame's contacted him, and he says he's not interested. Kelly over at Cincinnati is worried about trying to win the Big East. So when Gene Corrigan says the hardest thing is to find somebody who wants the job, why?
Oh, I think everybody wants the job. I can't believe anybody in this world that would not want to coach at Notre Dame. I mean, there's no place like it. I was there 11 years, and, I made $135,000. You go coach there because of the love of the school. When they introduced me, he said, I appreciate you wouldn't mention anything about salary. I said, oh, don't worry, Father. I'm as embarrassed as you are.
You took a pay cut, didn't you?
But the point is, you have to go have that coach picked out before you lose the other. When they hire this guy, they ought to already have a commitment from who's going to be the next coach. Because what happens? You're coaching at the University of Arkansas, and Notre Dame opens up. And they're going to go through this interviewing process and et cetera. And the media comes to you and says, you interested in Notre Dame? Well, your heart may want to be at Notre Dame. But you can't say, oh, yeah, I really hope they call me, because you're there in Arkansas. They think that's a pretty good job. And they have a lot of hunters who are good shooters. So you got to be careful in what you say. And you say, oh, no, I'm not interested at all. Because let's remember this. A guy by the name of Glenn Mason, who I recruited at Ohio State, was a head coach at Minnesota. And Ohio State opened up. He played at Ohio State. And he wanted the Ohio State job, but when they asked him, he said, yeah, I hope I get the job. He thought he had the job. And they decided, and they hired Jim Tressel. He was fired 2 years later at Minnesota because people turn on you. They think at Arkansas, that's the only job in the world, and you shouldn't even be interested in going anywhere else. So whether it be in Iowa, whether you be in Florida, whether you be in Oklahoma, you can't say, yeah, I'm interested in it. You may want to be there. Any Catholic would want to be there. I mean, when I left Notre Dame, I never thought I'd coach again. Where to go from Notre Dame? According to my mother, go directly to heaven, you sit by the Pope. You don't coach anymore. Then I went to live in a town where the average age is deceased. And all of a sudden, everybody wants to coach at Notre Dame. And as I talked to Urban Meyer, I said, you go to Notre Dame because they need you. Not whether you should or want to. It's not the case. If Notre Dame needs you, they call on you, you go. Period. End of case. No other subject.
Okay, so you obviously don't believe anybody who says they're not interested in the job. Who do you think genuinely is? Who do you think, at the end of the day, will wind up in that spot?
I think it depends upon timing and the ability to get people out of a contract, et cetera. But I think that Notre Dame should go hire somebody who really and truly has an experience of being successful. It could be Kirk Ferentz. I think he's done a marvelous job at Iowa. He's got all the character and integrity. Brian Kelly at Cincinnati has done a great job. I love what Patterson's done at TCU. I think Urban Meyer and Nick Saban and Stoops are as good a coaches as there are, not only now, but never. I think Mike Riley at Oregon State's vastly underrated. Peterson at Boise State. There's not a lack of great coaches in this country. There really isn't. And coaching's just eliminating mistake before they happen. And we have a lot of business people here. And one of my pep talks for next week at Dr. Lou will be for coaches that are going to a bowl for the first time. And coaching is a lot like running a business. As Father Hesburgh said when he hired me, he said, I can name you the head coach at Notre Dame. I can give you the title because titles come from above. He said, what I cannot do is I cannot name you the leader. He said, the followers are determined the leader. Titles come from above, leaders determined from below. And if you're going to be a leader, and whether you run the business or being a coach, you better have a vision where you want to take the Notre Dame program. Whoever goes there has to have a vision. This is where we want to go. We want to be the best in the country. The second thing you better have a plan of how you're going to get there. You're going to recruit the Catholic schools, whatever else case may be. You're going to solidify. It doesn't matter. Number 3, you must hold people accountable for the decisions they make. Too many times people make decisions, they aren't held accountable, and that includes the players and the coaches. And point number 4, don't associate yourself with people who want to win. Associate yourself with people that can't live with losing. Everybody wants to play when the band's playing, the crowd's cheering, the TV lights are on. But the real question is, can you live with losing? Because if you cannot live with losing, you will find a way to win. And I'm sure Notre Dame, and I know Jack Swarbrick, he's been very successful. He'll make the proper decision. I'll tell you, Notre Dame will be back on top. They have a lot going forward. It's still the best job in the country.
When will they be back on top?
Well, I think it'd be a lot hard to be on top next year because if Clausen comes out early and Golden Tate comes out early, your second-string quarterback had MCL and going to miss spring practice. Your third-string quarterback's a fifth-year senior. Your fourth-string quarterback transferred. You have 7 offensive linemen out of the 10 that are seniors. You have Michael Floyd and Rudolph, the tight end, 2 great receivers. You're only going to have them 1 more year. I think it would take them 2 years to get back on top. Somebody said, could you turn Notre Dame program? Eric Parsegian turned around immediately, but anybody will turn that thing around quickly. I make no mistake about it. You have to understand, we have a lot of Notre Dame people in here. If you've been at Notre Dame, people say, what makes it special? No explanation is necessary. If you haven't been at Notre Dame, no explanation will suffice. It's just a special place in recruiting. It's the only school in America that can come into Pennsylvania, compete with Penn State. It can go to California, compete with Southern Cal. Go to Texas, compete with Texas. You can recruit with any state school in the country. Nobody else can do that.
I know asking you about your one best memory at Notre Dame would probably be challenging. We would all think the '88 championship year might be one of those memories. But I want you to think of a player, one who you were most proud of developing from freshman year till senior year or whenever he may have left. Who is that one player that you take the most pride in bringing up the learning curve?
Boy, that's a difficult question because it's like this. If somebody said, who's your favorite player? I say, which is your favorite child? Players are like that. But the one player that would come to my mind is Chris Zorich. Chris Zorich was out of a high school in Chicago, the same one that Dick Butkus played at. He thought he was going to be a great linebacker. Didn't know his father, mother, the only child. We recruited him to Notre Dame. First day at Notre Dame, it was obvious he could not be a linebacker. He just did not have the speed to be a linebacker. I like to jokingly say if he got a race with a pregnant mother, the best he'd finish would be third. So we're going to make him a defensive lineman. He didn't want to be a defensive lineman. Pete's there the whole time. I mean, he got in a fight every day at practice. I had to run him out of practice continuously. He had a terrible stuttering problem. He couldn't say the three words without stuttering. And so what happened was at the end of that year, that was 1987, we go play in the Cotton Bowl. We get down, we play in the Cotton Bowl, we play Texas A&M. And we lost the game. And when you go to a bowl game, you took everybody on the team. And after the game, there was only one person in the locker room crying over the fact we lost. That was Chris Zorich. And I had to get on an airplane the next day, fly to Japan to coach in the Japan Bowl. In that 15-hour flight, I came to the conclusion I'm going to put people on the field that cared about football like Chris Zorich does. We can solve any problem in this world. We can solve any problem we have if enough people care. So all I felt is, let me find enough people care about the Notre Dame football program. It's Chris Zorich, who never played it down that whole year and yet cried when we lost. And next year we won the national championship. He won the Outland Award. He made All-American. We got permission from the NCAA to get him to a speech therapist to correct his stuttering. He played 8 years in the NFL. He was selected as the NFL Man of the Year for what he did for various charities. He went back to Notre Dame and got his law degree. He's now a lawyer. He now works at the University of Notre Dame. I talked to him 2 days ago. I mean, here's a young man that changing positions, everything else, all the adjustments, and yet every adversity and difficulty you're going to have, you find a way to solve it. We all have problems. We all have difficulties. There are always going to be problems in our way. But it just have to persevere and believe that there's a solution to it. And nothing in this world is very easy. And you won't meet anybody in this world. And every time I walk down the street in New York, everybody I see, I know they got problems. I have them, but everybody does, and problems will always be with us. But that young man, I could give you 100 different examples like that. They're just special people. A guy named Ryan Brewer. Ryan Brewer came to me. I'm in South Carolina, wanted to play major college football. Nobody offered him a scholarship. He's out of Columbus, Ohio. He said, I know I can play. I gave him a chance. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. Nobody recruited him. And he said, I know I can play college football. What I found out with Ryan Brewer, you can succeed when nobody else believes in you. You have no chance to succeed if you do not believe in yourself.
How much do those situations...
That young man that didn't believe, nobody believed, We beat Ohio State on January 1. He rushed for over 100 yards, caught pass for over 100 yards, scored 3 touchdowns, was MVP in the game. The following January, we beat him again. He averages 13 yards a carry. And yet I tell you right now, if you timed him in a 40-yard dash, you'd do it with an hourglass. But he had something inside that he's going to find a way to win, a way to succeed.
How much do situations like that remind you of your days at Kent State when you were an undersized linebacker, but you had an oversized heart? Is that what really sort of enables you to embrace those kind of stories?
You know, I wasn't that good of an athlete. I'll never forget when Tim Brown won the Heisman, and I came to New York to be with him in the event he didn't win. And Jim Nance, I think they were televising live on CBS, and he came to me, and he said, "We have a little extra time. Do you mind if I interview you?" Before they announced it, I said, "No." They turned on the light. The first thing Jim Nance said, "Did you ever dream about winning the Heisman?" I said, "Jim, I've never been asked that, but I dreamt about it all my life because for 3 reasons. I've been the first player from Kent State in Ohio to ever win it. I've been the first defensive player to ever win it, and I've been the first third teamer to ever win it." And the interview ended very, so we got to move on, et cetera. So, yeah, I loved the game. I learned an awful lot about it. I was not a particularly good athlete, but I think this, that everybody needs 4 things in your life. If you don't have 4 things in your life, you're going to feel a void. Everybody needs something to do, something you're passionate about doing. Everybody needs someone to love, something you really can hope for. Everybody needs something to hope for, someone to love, something to do, and someone to believe in. And having something to hope for is absolutely critical, and that's what dreams are all about. That's why, give me a guy that really has some dreams and ambition. And I don't mean to get off the track, but I do want to make this point because I think it's important. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but the dumbest thing I've ever done, we went to Notre Dame, we took program on the bottom. Miami beating us 58-6. We took it to the very top. For 9 straight years, we went to a January 1 bowl, the sugar, the cotton, the orange, or the fiesta. Nobody's done it before, nobody's done it since. And it's the dumbest thing I've ever done. There's a rule of life that said you're either growing or you're dying. A tree's either growing or it's dying, so's grass, so's a marriage, and so's a business. Doesn't have a thing to do with age, has everything to do with you trying to get better. We went to Notre Dame, we took that program up on top, they give you a lifetime contract. The alumni are immediately trying to get you declared legally dead. No matter what you do, it isn't going to satisfy people, and we'll be buried at Notre Dame. My wife and I have burial plots because the alumni buried us every Saturday. But the point is, you get on top, you say, you know, this is pretty good. Let's not take any risks. Let's not jeopardize where we are. Let's maintain it. And anytime you try to maintain a business, a marriage, a relationship, or coaching, youth get bored. You never have a new idea. You never have a reason to celebrate. And when I left Notre Dame, I honestly thought I'd never coach again. But it turned out I was not tired of coaching. I was tired of maintaining. And so that's why I think it's so important to always have things you want to do. And I want to pause here, congratulate the New York Athletic Club. This is beautiful here. I don't know if many of you realize it, but they have more Olympic gold medal winners here than all but 4 other countries in the entire world. This is a fantastic place with a great tradition. I'm proud to be here for luncheon.
One coach who's probably not tired of coaching is Bobby Bowden, who I know you have a close relationship with. And this was a big debate on the Michael Kay show the other day when Bowden announced his retirement. Michael very strongly thinks it's ageism. I'm not sure how I feel about that. To me, I look at the record in recent years and see that it's not as successful and there aren't as many fans in the stands and they're having struggles recruiting. What's your take on how much cachet a coach should have when they take a program that started at the bottom, built it up, provided 2 championships, but has struggled of late?
Well, I believe it's a black mark on college football and it's a black mark on Florida State for forcing a guy like Bobby Bowden out. I've known Bobby Bowden since April of 1960. I'm a graduate assistant at Iowa. We finished second in the country under Evashevsky. My job was to entertain coaches. One of the ones came out that spring was Bobby Bowden. 2 years later, we go on a honeymoon. My wife and I spend part of our honeymoon with Bobby Bowden and Ann and their 5 children. We've been friends. I've coached against him. There's not a classier guy in this world. There's not a guy that's done more for any university than what he's done for Florida State. 1946, Florida State was an all-girls school. Then in the mid-'60s, they got fairly good. And then they went downhill. Bobby Bowden inherited a team, I think, went 0-11 or 1-10. The people who complain about Bobby Bowden are the young people, the impatient people. The people look at Florida and say, well, Florida's winning and we aren't. Why can't we go get a younger guy that's about age? It's not about age. I have more energy than anybody in the country right now, and I want to tell you, I don't drink water. People say, why don't you drink water? It has no taste, and if it does, it ain't good for you. And I have a simple philosophy. I don't run if I can walk. I don't walk if I can stand. I don't stand if I can sit, and I don't sit if I can lie down. And I let my body tell me what to do. People say, I couldn't sleep last night. Then why'd you go to bed? If you're tired, go to bed. If you ain't, get up. It's not complicated. We screw up life by releasing all these god-dog things. Bobby Bowden has as much energy, and I think to have an individual go out like that with everything he has done and not allow him to go out with dignity and class, I think is a black mark on college athletics, and you can mark me down as undecided.
Well said. I think before Charlie Weiss got fired, he was already getting phone calls about moving back into the NFL. He's obviously had success with the Giants and the Jets and the Patriots, and you just get the feeling that Charlie Weiss is a better fit in the pros. You, on the other hand, had a short stint, 1 season with the Jets, didn't go so well. Your calling was in college. How do you make the distinction between where a coach is a better fit?
I think, and first of all, let me say this about Charlie Weiss. I think Charlie Weiss is a class individual. He loved Notre Dame. I think he did a lot of good things at Notre Dame. He's done a lot of wonderful things with his Hand and Friends Foundation. So I can't say anything negative about Charlie. But it is true that Charlie is a great strategist in lining up mismatches, etc. In 1976, I turned down the New York Jets job 3 different times. And a guy named Al Ward, a beautiful person, said, come up here and tell Leon Hess you don't want to coach the Jets. You'll get a trip up to New York. So I came up to New York to tell Leon Hess that, no, I'm staying in college at NC State. And I called my wife. She said, you did what? I said, I'm the head coach of the Jets. She said, you went up there to turn it down. I said, if it doesn't work out, we can always go back to intercollegiate athletics. Let's see what it's like. Well, then when I found out that our property taxes were larger than our monthly payment, etc. But it was an adjustment. But here's the problem. The problem wasn't with the New York Jets. You could not have had a better owner in this world than Leon Hess. Leon Hess had as much class and integrity and honesty and cared about other people. He's one of the great people I've known, and I feel bad because I let him down. I signed a 5-year contract with the New York Jets. But I went there without a real commitment. The first time I'm there about a month, and all of a sudden we lose John Riggins. John Riggins is going to the Washington Redskins because it's a first-year free agency, and we got nothing in return for John Riggins. Joe Namath could not ask for a nicer guy to coach, had problems with his hamstring. Most of the guys were older, etc. And when every time something went wrong, I'd say, I didn't think this is what I want to do. I didn't think this would work out. And I got up one day, and my wife's father had gone through, was having a heart attack. He was in the hospital. My wife was back there. We're struggling. Frank Boyles called, asked me to come back to Arkansas, recruited me. Didn't have a chance to talk to my wife. I made a decision when I was emotional. I made a decision when I was tired, and I made the wrong decision. I made the wrong decision to walk away from the New York Jets. There's nothing I can change about that. Leon Hess was out of the country at the time. Had I talked to him, my decision may have been different. They said, if you're going to leave, then we want you to leave now. That's why I left with 3 games left, because it was their decision. But once again, I say, don't ever make a decision when you're tired. Don't ever make a decision when you're in the middle of a difficult thing. So there's nothing wrong with professional football. The problem was with me. You win exactly the same way in professional and college. You win because people accept the role. They're tough. They're dedicated. They're committed. They execute fundamentals. The difference is how you get them. In the pros, you accrue them. You draft them. You pick them up on waivers, etc. In college, you recruit 15 guys, 25 guys. Maybe 15 of them are as good as you thought they'd be. The other 10 aren't. You can't buy them. You can't sell them. You got to trade them. You must develop those young people and convince them why it's in their best interest to become good football players, good students, good citizens, etc. So there is no difference, except in college you control everything. I controlled who we recruited, who played where, what offense, what defense. In the pros, you have different people. They determine who they're drafted, etc. The people that are really successful are the guys that have one person focus on the direction you're going. Spend some time with Mr. Kraft of the New England Patriots. That guy's tremendous. Everybody in that organization is focused on one thing, winning. Not keeping their job, anything. I spent an afternoon with him once, one of the more enlightening afternoons I spent, because he's so totally committed to everybody being on the same page. As I say, I wished I could change it. I can't, but I have to live with it. But it worked out well in my case.
'Tis the season to start griping about the BCS. And we have two non-BCS teams, Boise State with the WAC, TCU in the Mountain West, that are undefeated. Now, there is a scenario, if Nebraska beats Texas in the Big 12 championship, that TCU could get a shot in playing the title game. But when you look at what they've done, they've had 11 win seasons, 5 of the last 7 years. They crushed Utah and BYU, both of which were ranked in the top 20 during the season when they played them. Does it need to change?
Well, they also beat Clemson by 4 points, I think, in a great game. On the BCS, I think if you eliminate the letter C, you got a better appraisal of it. I think TCU is a great football team. Last year we did the bowl game where Boise State was undefeated and they played TCU, which was 11-1. And TCU, you don't want to play TCU. Florida doesn't want to play TCU. Texas, nobody wants to play TCU. But they aren't going to be in the championship game because Nebraska's 108th in total offense, and there's no way they're going to beat Texas. I mean, it just ain't going to happen. I use the word ain't for emphasis, not to illustrate the caliber of education I received at Kent State University. But we aren't going to have a playoff. And the reason we aren't going to have a playoff is follow the money. When the NCAA basketball tournament's played, much of that money goes to the NCAA. And they, in turn, give each school a small portion and use it for an awful lot of other good purposes. The money from the bowls and the TV goes to the conferences. And the conferences divide it up. And if you're in a conference, you're going to get $12 million from your conference because of bowls and TV. You aren't about to give that up. They keep trying to tweak it where we eventually have a national championship game plus one, but we aren't going to go have a national championship playoff. But I agree with you. Life is not fair. You always hear some people hollering, we're number one. But there are always 3 or 4 teams hollering, why aren't we number one? And I happen to be in that scenario at Notre Dame a couple times on both ends of it. There's always going to be people that are not satisfied. You say, well, TCU and Boise State should play a tougher non-conference schedule, and I say that also, except nobody will play them. Hey, I wouldn't play them. I guarantee you right now, I wouldn't want to play them as a non-conference game. So when you complain about the teams you're playing, it's because not many teams will play them. But I think that TCU is a great football team. They have unbelievable speed, and they've done a great job this, Bonnie. They have taken and project You go into TCU, they can't recruit with Texas, but they'll take a running back who's not good enough to be recruited by Texas, but make him a linebacker. All of a sudden, he's got great speed. They keep taking an individual and moving them. It's like we did with Chris Zorich. We did it with Frank Stams. We did it with Andy Heck. Pete, all these guys, you know, their speed was questionable at one position. We moved to another one. All of a sudden, they had great speed for that position. TCU is a great team, and yeah, it's not quite fair, but then again, life's not fair.
I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to open it up to the floor for some Q&A, and they're off the football topic. Unless you live under a rock, you know what's going down with Tiger Woods. Now, a couple years ago, and I think as public figures, we all understand that we face public scrutiny and things of that nature. You had a situation where you made a comment in talking about Rich Rodriguez's leadership that didn't go over very well. So you know what it's like to feel that red-hot spotlight on you. When you read about or hear about what's going on with Tiger Woods, how much responsibility do you think people in the public eye have to speaking about what goes on in their private lives?
Well, I don't know what you're commenting about Rich Rodriguez. I've always said I think he's a heck of a coach, and I said he'd have a difficult time a year ago because of what he inherited. I mean, he had one offensive lineman coming back. He transferred to Ohio State. He lost everybody else. But you try to say what's in your heart. I know Tiger Woods. I don't know him exceptionally well. I'd play golf with him. I'd explain who won, but modestly, I just want to say I didn't. But I think what happens to somebody else's life, particularly when you're in the public limelight, I only look at it and say, I hope we all learn from somebody else's problems and difficulties. You don't want anybody to have problems and difficulties, but I think let them have the privacy, let them move on. I just hope that we all learn. What I find when people are successful in the field of business, the field of politics, the field of athletics, they think they either become invisible, they think they become invincible. They think they can go anywhere and nobody's going to see them. They think they can do anything they want and get away with it. I learned that lesson the hard way. My dad had gone to the 3rd grade and through a variety of different things became a successful businessman and divorced my mother and went astray, etc., and eventually ended up losing everything. So all you say, whatever happens, look at it and say, what can I learn from that situation? Because I don't want to be there. But I think let him have the privacy. That's up to him and his family. Who am I to pass judgment on anybody else? I'm going to move on, but just hope that I can always be true to my wife. We've been married 49 years, and if you want some great advice, listen to your spouse. There's nobody knows you any better, loves you more, wants to see you succeed any more, or be any more honest with you. And she's my best friend. And she said to me not long ago, she said, Lou, I can't please everybody in the world, so I'm going to stop trying. And I'm going to focus on pleasing one person a day. And today's not your day, and tomorrow doesn't look real promising either. So just move on.
You're a tremendously successful coach. You're a tremendously successful football analyst. And so when I read over the summer that you were thinking about going into politics and running for Congress in the Central Florida district where you live, I said, why would he want to do that? Where does the interest lie for you in that?
Because I'm screaming at the TV. I'm tired of tearing up newspapers. I'm tired of worrying about what's going to happen to my grandchildren in the future and the fiscal irresponsibility and the loss of freedom, the decisions that different people make. It's time somebody stood up and be held accountable for the decisions they make. We have a deficit. We need to put that in order. I pay an awful lot of taxes. People here pay an awful lot of taxes. That's our obligation. But I got to tell you something. I'm tired of them wasting and spending and abusing the money that we pay them. Take care of it, protect it, spend it like your own, and let's have some accountability in Washington. I'm tired of Republicans. I'm tired of Democrats. I'm tired of these people blaming him. How about being American, doing what's in the best interest of this country? We have an obligation to help people that cannot help themselves. We have an obligation to give everybody a chance to succeed. But if you want to fail, you have that right to fail yourself. But we should give you the opportunity to do it. And the worst thing we can do for somebody is to say that you aren't good enough to succeed on your life and we got to take care of you. Give them an opportunity. Let's move on. Let's reward the people who are willing to work, get up every day, and do the things that need to be done. Other than that, I don't have a real strong opinion.
Okay, so when are you running?
I'm not. I'm not. In fairness, that I could not. I looked into it. It just wasn't the right thing to do. I think it, but I have been involved in fundraising, et cetera, for different people. Bob McDonald, who's a Notre Dame alum, the governor of Virginia, I went down there and spoke for him 8 days before the election. Well, you don't know, Governor McDonald had a sister, Mo, that went to Notre Dame. She was a cheerleader at Notre Dame. She was Miss Virginia, and she dated my son for a couple of years. And so I went there, and the first question I was asked by the media, what gives you the right to come into this state when you aren't a resident and campaign for somebody and tell us how to vote? I said, I think that's a good question. You ought to ask President Obama that when he comes here. White House isn't in Virginia either, so move on.
All right, well, you've been terrific, Coach. I'm sure there's lots of folks out there who have some questions for you. Now, is there a microphone, or are we just going to ask guests to speak very loud? There is no microphone. Okay, so if you're going to ask a question, make sure you can project.
Yes, sir.
Why wasn't, in your opinion, Charlie Weiss successful at Notre Dame?
I think I wasn't there. I think football is a game of fundamentals, a game of blocking, a game of tackling, a game of discipline mentally, game of toughness, mental and physical. I think his offense was good enough to win the championship. I thought they would. I think their offense was one of the more prolific in the country, sixth in the country this year in total offense. I think the defense let them down. They did not play well enough on defense, and that doesn't mean that Charlie Weiss would not be successful in the long run. What happened on defense, I don't know. You had Corin Brown, who I think is a great coach. You had John Sununu, who he brought in from Georgia Tech, had a great reputation. But I think that's the main reason was the defensive performance, because they were sure good enough to win it on offense. Who else has questions? See, I'd love to have a question answer, but nobody wants to ask a question. They say, well, I don't want to ask a question because that's a dumb, stupid question. I'm here to tell you.
I ask stupid questions every day. I get paid to do it.
There's no such thing as a dumb, stupid question. You have a question, we'd love to answer it. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the Civil War tonight?
Pardon?
What are your thoughts on the Civil War game tonight?
I'd like to apologize. That's a dumb, stupid question. That's nah.
See, now this is for the Rose Bowl.
No,
Oregon and Oregon State. Whoever wins goes to the Rose Bowl. So
It doesn't matter what question. That just loosens up. I believe Oregon will win. Last year, Oregon State had to beat Oregon to go to the Rose Bowl. Oregon State's not been there since 1965. Last year, Oregon beat them 65-38. In addition to that, they had 690 yards total offense. Now the game's at Oregon. The winner goes to the Rose Bowl. I have to pick Oregon. Both of them have very good defenses. Both of them have outstanding running backs. You have Jaquez Rogers averaging like 114 yards a game for Oregon State. You have LaMichael James, who's averaging 118. But the difference is Mazzoli, the quarterback from Oregon. He can run, he can throw, he gives you flexibility that I don't think Oregon State has. So I believe that Oregon will win a close football game, and when you think about it, Bonnie, what a great turnaround that is. From the first game of the year to be embarrassed by Boise State.
That's right.
To winning the Rose Bowl in your last game. That would be a tremendous accomplishment for Coach Chip Kelly.
Nice to see a changing of the guard finally in the Pac-10,
Yeah.
too. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Right back there. Yes, sir. Pardon?
At the beginning of the year, there was no Big East teams ranked in the top 25, and now there's 2 in the top 10. What does the Big East have to do, based on the last 5 years and their very good bowl record, to get recognition to play for a national championship?
Okay, the question is that there was no Big East in the top 25. Now there's 2 of them. What do they have to do to get their recognition? Well, I think they do a great thing. You know what the Big East does? They play 7 conference games and 5 non-conference games. Now, some of those conference games are pretty good, but I think our Sisters of Mercy, Northwest Fire Station number 3, isn't present the greatest challenge. So naturally, you're going to end up being 5-0 before you go into the conference. Then they take who they think are going to be the 3 or 4 best teams in the Big East, and they have them play each other at the end of the year. That's why Pittsburgh's playing Cincinnati. That's why West Virginia played Pittsburgh. They take the teams at the end, and yeah, I think the Big East has done a very, very good job in it. The conference that I think might be overrated right now is the ACC. When you have the one conference division winner, Georgia Tech, get beat at home by Georgia, who was 3-5 in the SEC. Then you have Clemson, the other winner, get beat by South Carolina, was 3-5 in the ACC. Your 2 champions got beat by the SEC schools that were in the middle of the pack. And then you have Florida State get beat quite decisively by Florida. But I think the Big East, I think it's a good conference. I think it's getting better recognition. I think Cincinnati's for real. And Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh got beat by NC State, which was their only loss prior to West Virginia. It's just hard to say anybody dominates other than the SEC. I think the SEC is by far the best conference in football.
Yeah, Coach, you made the comment about you don't fire your current coach unless you have one lined up. Do you think this current administration at Notre Dame made that same mistake again, or did they have someone that they were...
That I don't know, but let me just say this, and I probably shouldn't say this, but Notre Dame had talked to me previously, and just trying to get a list of people who might be interested in coaching at Notre Dame, understanding certain parameters that would not change at Notre Dame. I'll never forget, they don't take transfers, they didn't redshirt, they don't have an athletic dorm, they don't have a training table at Notre Dame. They're going to play the most difficult schedule they can find. They don't have good athletic facilities, they didn't plan on improving them. They had a policy that the head football coach was not allowed to make more than the president of Notre Dame. The president of Notre Dame was a priest that took the vow of poverty. I mean, they covered all the. Now, they made abundantly clear, we want our coach to succeed, and we're going to support him every way he can. But in the event it doesn't work out, we need to know what group we might be able to select from that would not be intimidated by these things at the University of Notre Dame. And all I'm saying is, because what happens, the longer it goes, everybody, this guy ought to be the coach, he ought to be the coach. Let the administration pick the coach. But it's hard to get people interested when you're not sure of their interest. And as I said, like I'm at Arkansas, and Hugh Hyman calls me when Woody Hayes left and said, you're the leading candidate at Ohio State, and we want you to apply for the job. We want to interview you. I said, Hugh, I coached at Ohio State. I've been at William & Mary. I've been at NC State. I'm at Arkansas. I got a track record. What will you find out in an interview you don't know now? I love Ohio. I was raised in Ohio. I coached under Woody Hayes. We won the national championship. But I'm not going to go through an interviewing process because it's unfair to the people at Arkansas. And he said, well, if you change your mind, call me. I said, well, I wouldn't sit by the phone. I never called him. I stayed in Arkansas, and it turned out to be a good decision. You run into that when the media gets involved, and that you aren't going to burn a bridge behind you when you don't know exactly what you have. But I'll guarantee you, if Notre Dame calls somebody and says, you got the job, period, I think there'd be a lot more interest than people think there is, because I really believe it's still the best college coaching job in the country. It's they say it's the hardest. They say the President of the United States is a hard job, Mayor of New York's a hard job, and coach at Notre Dame's a hard job. I'm not sure it's in that order, but it'd be close. It's like I had a lifetime contract, and the alumni declared me legally dead. So you just move on.
All right, we'll take one more. You want to pick, Coach?
Yes, sir. That's a good question. I called Dick Rosenthal, the AD, He said, they paid the Notre Dame coach because of what you paid me. And Urban Meyer, I talked to him last week. He said, Coach, when I coached for you at Notre Dame, I made $55,000. I said, I know, and you're overpaid. But I think coaches' salaries are so inflated right now. And I never had an agent. I know everybody has an agent. I never had an agent. I wanted to sit down and look the athletic director and the president in the eye and shake their hand. Those are the people I wanted to deal with. Now everybody seems to have an agent, including assistant coaches. But I think that Notre Dame has to decide what it will take to get the guy they want and whatever it takes. And money's not a problem at Notre Dame, I'm sure, but those are decisions. Notre Dame is not run by alumni. And it's not run by outsiders. It's run by people on the inside. And I have great respect for the Board of Trustees, great respect for the leadership at Notre Dame. And I do believe the lady on the dome, and I'm Catholic, don't want to offend anybody, but I do believe that that's a special place. And the lady looks after it. I remember, Pete, when we played Miami, we had a lunch of 3,000 people. The guy gave the invocation, get up and said, I'm Father so-and-so, I'm the team chaplain at Miami, and he looked at me and he said, Coach, I want you to know God doesn't care who wins this game because I'm a Catholic priest at Miami. And I got up and I said, I agree with you, Father. God doesn't care who wins this game, but I want to promise you his mother does. But it just, Notre Dame will make the decision what they think is in the best interest of the school, and they'll pay the individual what they think it's worth. They just have to do what they feel is right, because I know winning at Notre Dame is very important. Winning championships at Notre Dame is very important, but not at the expense of the academic excellence. Notre Dame is one of the top 15 schools in the country academically by U.S. News and World Report. Interestingly, it's the only religious school affiliated in the top 15. And the other top 14 schools academically were all religiously affiliated at one time, but now are not. So that's just a point of information Father Hesburgh gave me. I can't allow it getting back your head. Someday I may need to use that. But be that. One last question, Bonnie. I got to go up and do Dr. Lou and do the show. We'll take two more.
Coach, the current policy on concussions, particularly the NFL, also we could bring that into college. What's your view of that?
I agree with you. I think it's wrong. Players are bigger, faster, stronger. Collisions are greater, but I also think it's because of a lack of fundamentals. I think the coaches are as much to blame as anything. Because when I was taught to play, and we didn't have face masks when I first started, and you were taught, you kissed the football. You kissed the football with your face, you wrapped your arms, you drove your shoulder into them. Now everybody's coming in with their headgear, using a weapon, throwing forearm. You do not see many people tackle the way they should. And if they went back to teach tackling the way it should, kiss the football, wrap the arm, drive your legs, we would see better defense. We would not see the concussions and the dangerous things that are happening in college football today, but that's because that's not the way the game is meant to be tackled. Too many people want to throw a forearm in there because they want to make sure they don't get injured, et cetera, and use their helmet as a legal weapon, et cetera. Not trying to hurt anybody, but that's just easier to play that way. No, that's not the way you play the game. You play the game the right way, and if we tackle the right way, we wouldn't have those problems. Unless they do something, somebody's going to get injured seriously. I concur with your opinion about the problems. One last question. Yes, sir. I love Urban Meyer. I just think he's a great coach and a great person. But I'm not going to. Urban Meyer has to make those decisions for himself, whatever he's going to do. He says he's going to stay in Florida. That's it. But it's just like my son Skip. I'm proud of him. He's going to the 4th straight bowl at East Carolina. He's fighting for the 2nd conference championship in a row. And, I'm not going to live my life vicariously through my son's experience. He's going to leave his life, and Urban's going to live his. And I hope whoever Notre Dame decides they want, they go get the guy that they want, and Notre Dame gets back on top, because when Notre Dame's on top, it's good for college football. But I also want to say I'm just a fan of college football. I think, whether it be South Carolina, Arkansas, I'm going to pull for them, cheer for them. But with job Saban's done down there, it's just great for college football. It's the greatest game in the world. And I'm also a spokesman for the All-State Good Works team. And not many people know, but there's so many people do so many good things in college athletics we never hear about. We hear about the bad things. But all All-State tries to do is recognize people that have made a difference in people's lives and in the community. And we've had people like Colt McCoy and Tim Tebow and Gerald McCoy from Oklahoma. And there are a lot of great things about college athletics. It's pure, it's simple, but it's also at a very formative age for those athletes. You have an obligation to make sure you give them the right leadership. And I only had 3 rules. Do the right thing, do the best you can, show people you care. Those are the only 3 rules I had. Because everybody asked 3 questions. Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? Do you care about me? If you do those 3 things, everybody going to trust you, know you're committed, know you care. And you get people you can trust, you're committed to care, put your arm around them, hug them, never let them go, because you're going to have a winner. You'll have a winning team, you'll have a winning business. I'm not very smart. I went to school predominantly to eat my lunch. I have written 3 New York Times bestseller. I'm the only guy who's written more books than he's read, but I try to keep life simple and move on.
Well, it's certainly been an amazing journey from, I think as you quoted it, a kid with a lisp in the bottom half of his high school class out of East Liverpool, Ohio, the only coach ever to take 6 schools to bowl games, the only Notre Dame coach to take the Fighting Irish to 9 straight bowl games, and a recent inductee into the Hall of Fame. Lou Holtz, it's been so wonderful visiting with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Bonnie.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Happy holidays.
I hate to run, but I have to leave because I got to go do Dr. Lou, and I got to do an hour pregame show, and I got to drive up there to New York. So I'm not trying to be rude, but I do have to leave. But thank